Hi everyone, it's Rebekah at Uncorked Canvas. I'm your instructor today, and welcome to painting Starry Night Seattle. I'm going to walk you through those supplies real quick. So first off, you want this paper unwrapped or unfolded and put on your station underneath you. And then if you have not already, get your water cup all filled up with water. And usually I put that like above my paper towels, and I lay out my brushes on those paper towels as well. Make sure you have those all out and ready to access. What you'll want to do is you'll want to scoop out the paints as you need them onto your paper plate. All right, so you guys make sure you have your drink handy. You got yourself topped off if you got wine or beer or a margarita, which sounds amazing right now. It's sunny outside and that's margarita weather, so now I've got plans for after the painting. Are you going to have margarita tonight? So I'm talking to Brad behind the screen. He's our IT guy. I'll probably reference him as IT guy. So if I talk behind the camera, I'm talking to him. I'm not avoiding you guys. I don't want this to be awkward between us, so I'm not trying to avoid you. All right, so what you're going to do first step is the most straightforward and kind of boring steps. We want to get out of the way so that it dries and we get to the fun stuff. So you're going to grab your biggest brush, foam brush, dip it into your water cup, just submerge it all the way, and then squeeze out. I'm just using my hand to squeeze out all the paint, get everything out of there just so it's not dripping wet. And then you've got 3 different blues. So if you look at this, we really do have a spectrum of kind of light to dark, but these 2 blues are pretty similar. So look at your labels, and what right now we're doing, we've got cerulean and cobalt. They look really similar, but the cobalt's what we're looking for here. So what you want to do is you want to scoop up the cobalt and paint your whole canvas. So very, very simply, don't worry about your brush strokes or anything or keeping it neat or tidy in any way. We just want to get rid of all the white of our canvas. All right. And all the way down. If you have it up on an easel, make sure you pull out to the edge of your easel. If you have it laying flat, just make sure you get it covered. You can paint the edges if you want to, the sides. And again, don't worry about smoothing it or keeping it neat or tidy. What this is doing for us is this is making it possible so that when we go in to do all of our layering and building up of the blues and everything on top, we don't have to brush literally every square inch of the canvas. We'll have blue showing through. So it's really doing kind of half the work for us later on. So we want to get this covered, and then we have to wait for it to dry. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get this into my water cup, fully submerge it, and then just leave it there. That was the only thing we needed that guy for. So when you go to clean him out, just go over to your sink and run it under running water and squeeze it out just like you would any sponge, and you can keep reusing it again and again. I'm going to dry mine out. Once I'm done with that, if it's not dry yet, just pause the video, okay? So my canvas is dry. Now just a heads up, as we're going throughout this whole process, I'm going to keep painting and not stop painting until I'm done. That being said, I encourage you guys to pause pretty much after every single step. If you're not on pace with me, then just pause and rewind as much as you need. So I'm just trying to teach so that it's concise and you can see all the steps back to back. But that does not mean you have to paint at the same pace or try to keep up or feel like you are being rushed. Take your time. This video is for you to use how you need. So just take your time with pausing, rewinding, take a little break, go grab some snacks, do whatever you need to, up to you to pace it how you are comfortable with, okay? So take your time. So what I'm going to do is generally break down the Starry Night Sky first on the board here and then on my canvas over here, so you'll see it happen twice. So I think this is still a little bit wide for proportions of my canvas. I want you guys to see the proportions right. I know a lot of people love when I erase whiteboards with my hand. I think that's definitely my mom's favorite thing that she ever sees me do. So if that bothered you, look away. Look away. That's like nails on the chalkboard, I think, but fingers on the whiteboard, right? All right. So what we're going to be doing is proportioning off the Starry Night Sky so that when we're going in to really fill in all the swirls and all the blue and all the everything that goes on top, by giving ourselves a roadmap, we can just follow the brush strokes and think about colors rather than thinking about where everything needs to go. So we're going to build that roadmap. I'll show you first with some white on my canvas. I'm actually going to draw, though, I'm going to draw first the top of the, if you look at your photo, I've got my photo reference right here as well. So the top of the buildings right here, I want to know really where my sky is going to stop. That's really what I want to do because I want to give myself plenty of room, but then not completely cover up where the city's going to go. So I'm just going to give myself general proportions. We can always change things as we go and adapt things. But if you look at your photo, you'll see that the very bottom of those swirls that go behind the city, those are at least 2/3 the way down your canvas, or about 1/3 of the way up. So if you want to just be a little bit cautious with that, I would go an eyeball 1/4 of the way up your canvas, just so you have a little extra room to play around with that. And so what you're going to do is grab some white and just maybe give yourself a little tick mark on either side, just to know generally it's maybe a little bit low, but it's better that you go a little bit far down, and you can always put your buildings on top of some of your sky that you didn't necessarily intend to. So what you'll do is create from there. You'll go, so let's just say we went about 1/4 of the way up. What you'll want to do is go about 3 fingers high from there, about 3 fingers up. Give yourself another tick mark. These are all approximations, so don't stress too much about proportions, or if your finger's the same as mine. I have children's fingers, so chances are yours is not going to look like mine no matter what. So when we're going through here, all we have to do is create kind of a swirly vortex pattern that is going to be what's behind your city. It doesn't have to be anything particular. You can even have the spot be straight, but you want just something that's eventually going to float behind your city. And then your sketch marks, your little dashes, and all of these little brush strokes are just done with your little brush when you get to it. And we'll do that together on the canvas when we're there, but just watch me draw it first. You don't have to worry about doing it quite yet. So all of these little marks with the pen are what you're also going to draw. So I'm going to go in now, I'm going to do the big swirl in the sky, this big S. Now I've really got what's left of my canvas, and I can see where I want this. It really is a sideways S with just maybe an extra curly tail to it. You just don't want it to run into those swirls you just put down here for your city. So I'm just going to give myself a sideways S, and then from there, sitting inside the top swirl, I'm going to give myself this big guy that goes to the side. That's going to be our big swirl. So let's go ahead and grow each of those sides. It kind of tapers a little bit when it comes down to meet the S on its back. And if you need to draw an actual S like I did, go for it. That's why I drew it that way. All right, and we're just going to give ourselves these little road maps. This is going to tell us where our brush strokes just need to go. We're just giving ourselves a road map for later. And we'll have then our squiggle in the sky. So that being said, now that we kind of have this shape in the sky, we can change things if we want to. Maybe a little bit later, maybe not quite yet, but for example, something that I might want to do with mine, and I don't have an eraser, that's why I use my hand. Someone confiscated my eraser. Long story. It's a very long story. He took it, that's the story, that's all of it. All right, so something like this we could always change by making a little bit more area for our S. If you look in the photo, you can see that there's a little bit different swirl down there that maybe gets a little bit more room for your S. So that's something that you can change and adapt as we go. That's why we're sketching first. So, and then also learn from my mistakes. If you want to make sure that it swoops down, now when we go to our painting, we'll actually have that chance. So now we want to make a circle that fills in this top corner, a ring for our moon that's going to go up there. So that's going to be our sketch. And let me go ahead, because a lot of times all those words in the drawings don't make so much sense. Let's see it happen on the canvas. So I'm going to grab my large brush. Out of the two I have left, not the big sponge, but the large brush. I'm going to get that wet first. You always want to get your brushes wet first. I'm going to dip right into my white color, or lack of color. Hashtag science. All right, so I want to go 1/4 of the way up, my canvas. Give myself a little dash marks on either side. And then I want to go about 3 fingers up from there on either side, and that just gives me a general idea. And then let's try to give myself enough room to do kind of that dip down where the S is going to sit a little bit later on. And so I'm just going to give myself those little tick marks. All right. All right, and then that's all I'll need. I'll know which direction now my brush strokes are going to go a little bit later on. All right, so now I'm going to draw my S, and I want it to kind of sit inside that dip down. You can, of course, change any of these patterns and shapes that you want to. This is art. You should definitely make it your own if you want something different. You don't even have to do the biggest swirl in the sky. No rules. All right, so now I've got that. I'm just going to grow these out. They're going to taper just a little bit where they come to meet, but not much. Just want to kind of grow the sides and get these to nice big shapes that almost fill up the sky. And this is also good practice for the direction your brush strokes need to go later as well. So kind of practice those little dashes and see if maybe you like something with larger brush strokes or more narrow or more dotting or whatever you like. This is yours to completely customize if you want to change up any shapes in the sky. So if you like a certain brush stroke that you did where it was maybe a little bit shorter or a little bit longer, I've seen people do a lot of different styles. Surprisingly, for something that's so Van Gogh, you can completely customize it. Now real quick, I'm going to do something a little bit different inside the moon. I'm going to fill this up with about a tangerine size circle of white. It doesn't have to be neat or even solid white, but later that's going to prep this area for when we do the yellow on top. Because if we did just one layer of yellow later on, you're not going to be able to really, you're going to have to do multiple layers of that yellow for it to sit on top of that blue that's so dark. So we're just going to go ahead and give ourselves about a tangerine size of white just so that it's prepped and primed for our other colors later. So now what I'm going to do is take some black and fill in just the little bit of area that's surrounding these. I'll give myself again that road map. So what you're doing with this black, we're going to do the same dashes, but what we're going to be doing is really more echoing the shapes that they're next to. The white that we did, it's going to follow the same patterns and flow kind of alongside the shapes that it's running into and running alongside. So however you really want to do that, it's going to be way more subtle than the white, so you don't have to be really particular about where it's going. Make sure it just kind of goes in between some of your bigger shapes so that it really carves them out, maybe inside the little loop there. And then it's just going to kind of echo what it's next to. So that's going to be pretty subtle as far as how much space there is. There's not a ton of space for that black, so don't feel like you have to get as detailed. I'm just going to clean out that brush, get most of that white out, and then go in with some black. And where I've got space, I'm just going to give myself a little bit of those lines. And this will be where I go with my darker blues and not too long. And then around the moon, don't forget. Okay. So what I'm also doing, what you'll definitely want to, if you haven't been doing it this whole time, you'll definitely want to think about it as you get to filling in the actual brush strokes later. This is again our roadmap, so it's not super important that you be doing anything specific quite yet, but start to think about how your brush is flowing along the canvas. When we get to the colors, it'll be way more obvious. But if you haven't seen already, what I'm doing with my brush when I go into paint is I am turning the brush so that it also follows the pattern that I'm following. So my brush is not just these straight lines that are trying to follow this shape. I'm not just coming in here with straight lines trying to fill this shape. I'm having my brush turn and flow with the curvature of that design, that pattern. So just make sure your brush strokes aren't also flat and stagnant shapes. They should be swirling and flowing with and alongside those patterns. So your brush stroke itself describes the shape. So it's very important that, especially as we start to do our layering on top, they're not just straight or just globs. They're dashes that flow. They've got that fluidity to them, much like flow does, has fluid. You know, it's all like the same word. All right, so I'm going to let that brush sit there for a second, let it think about what it's done. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave this drawing up here. Kind of looks like a Baskin Robbins. All right, so what I'm going to do now is mix my colors. So the general idea for this is using the white and making 3 different piles of blue. So what I'm going to do is, and I'll show you, I'll mix it, but I'll explain it first. So I'm going to take some white, I'm going to make a pile next to each of my blues, and I'm going to create then 3 more blue shades, just of those colors, and then I'll dip into those colors by themselves. So that gives me 6 total colors that I'll be dipping into, also my white. So what we want to do is we want to have those mixtures so that when you go down to your palette, what you're going to be able to do is pull from each of those every time your brush goes down to your palette. So when you are filling in these bright areas of white, we want a lot of variety of blues. We want to build and have a lot of contrast between our blues. So the more shades we have and the less we have to be so careful about what color we're grabbing, I go down, I fill up my brush, I empty it out on my palette, I go down on my canvas, and then I go down to my palette and I pick up another color, and it's different every time I go down. So I want that much variety. So first I'm going to prime myself and my palette by mixing up my colors. So what you'll do, just to make sure your white stays pure, scoop it up first for each one. so you don't have blue going into your white every time. I'm going to put it next to my blues, and then I'm going to pull from the edge of my pile of blue so that I don't dilute that pile with a dirty brush. I'm going to stir it into this, make a secondary blue color, just a more pale version of that color. Make sure you press out any of the extra paint so you don't waste any. And maybe wipe it on your paper towel, go into the next one, push some of that cobalt into that white. And that's where you can really see that these blues are very different from each other. That cobalt's much more pale, kind of a cooler one. And the other one is a kind of a turquoisey color. So I'm going to wipe off that extra and then push. The other one is a phthalo blue, if you are curious. And those are pretty similar to the cobalt when they get white added to them. So I've now got 6 colors to mix into. And then at some point when you're mixing the white, or if you are picking up the white by itself, just make sure you're pulling always from the edge of the pile of white, or you're going to completely mess up your whole pile of white by having a dirty brush. All right, so generally pick up one of your blues and start following in those same dash marks. Start following your pattern in the sky. I've emptied out that blue, so I'm going to go dip into my other one. Empty that guy out. It doesn't really matter which blue. Just start building and layering. But then don't forget, you're going to go into those blues also by themselves. Empty out your brush. Don't be too careful. Know that this is going to build and you're going to layer and go on top of your other blues. Go until that's empty. Don't spend too much time in one area. And start to just fill in your shape. You've already got the roadmap built out. All you have to do is follow it now. And also just know that this blue and like the cobalt mixed together make a great color too. The more variety you have, the more fun and texture you can build with these colors layering on top of each other. And then just start hammering it out. Don't forget your white. And as you're switching between colors, you can wipe off the extra on your paper towel. And that'll keep that blue that you mix into next, or the white, just a little bit more pure. So keep using your paper towels. Don't spend too much time in one area because those colors will start mixing together too much and they'll start just getting muddy. The more you brush something that's wet, the more it's going to blend in. And just not have those dash marks. So if that's what you're looking for, just keep brushing it. But one of the harder things is not continuing to brush it. So once you lay down a brush stroke, don't try to go in and fix it or perfect it. Just know you're going to layer on top of it in a second. You'll come back and visit it again. But just leave it alone for a second. Don't spend too much time in one area. You want to go down and fill these up. And by the time you go back to that area that you want to touch up again, it'll be a little bit more dry and your colors will be even more popping on top. All right, this is a good way to kind of zone out and just start getting color up there. So experiment with your colors. Just know that you can build and change them and layer them and customize however you want to. If you only like the turquoise and that's all you want to see in your sky, just go with it. Whatever you want to do. And of course, at this point, you can also change up your shape. If the sketch wasn't quite right and now you're seeing it as it gets filled up and built, you can really see the shape a little bit better. Change it up. This is your chance for sure. If you went too far with the shape, wait till the dark areas and we'll kind of carve out what we don't want anymore. Don't forget to carve out around your moon also. If you're trying to brighten it up by adding a lot of white on top, you're going to have to let it dry just a tiny bit longer because that white's going to keep just mixing in with the wet blue. So just know that if you want to brighten it up, it can easily be added later on. Even like the areas that I started with up here in the big swirl in the sky, those areas have even started getting dry. Just a little bit more tacky anyway. They're not quite as wet as they started out. So my colors are even sitting better on top of those even now. So the best thing you can do for an area that you're bothered by is leave it alone for a time and then come back to it. For one, with fresh eyes, but for another, just letting the paint dry so you don't keep making mud is the best technique for just giving it some time and be ready for some fresh paint. Okay. I'm just going to do a couple more touches. Sometimes it's really hard to tell if something is finished until you have the other elements of the painting around it. So sometimes it's stopping painting before you think it's quite time, knowing that you can always revisit it and add more to it, but sometimes just letting it be a little bit before you feel comfortable. But once you add the other pieces around it, you'll be really surprised at what really is done. So a lot of times the advice that I'm trying to tell you guys is what I need to hear in my own head. So I'm going to stop in just a moment. Even though I could work on this forever and keep layering and building, I gotta give it some time. All right. Just try to make sure that you've got the balance of all of your colors. If you used turquoise only on one of your shapes, just make sure that you go in and visit each of the other shapes and make sure that they get the same color treatment. All right, so I'm going to wipe off my brush first on my paper towels and then clean it out. I want to get really ideally the white out of my brush. That's more what I'm looking for because I'm going to go in with my dark colors next. So to clean out your brush, always wipe it on your paper towel first and then just kind of gently swirl it at the bottom of your cup. Make sure that water gets flushed all the way through. You might need to clean it a couple times, but if the water comes out clear on your paper towel or even just a little tinted blue, you've got a clean brush. And then for the dark areas, what you're going to be doing is pretty much all of the blues, just no white added. If you want to go with a darker kind of sky around the colors, you can go with a little bit of black. I find that's a little bit too dark. So I tend to just kind of stick with my blues by themselves and maybe a couple touches of black here or there. That black goes really, really far really quickly though, so you want to add just a tiny bit to maybe some of your dark blue and then just make a really deep blue. So I've added a little bit of black, just a tiny bit to mostly blue, that darker blue, and that gives me a really nice dark kind of navy blue without going so deep as you would with just black by itself. So when you get up to the edges of your brighter areas, what you want to do is not just avoid them completely and try to keep a solid line in between. You actually want to have a couple brush strokes that go in between so that it doesn't look like they don't blend into each other just a little bit. So you're going to take some of that and have a couple brush strokes of your darker, any of the blues that you've got. I tend to use a lot of that turquoise to add some texture. And then just kind of put a couple brush strokes down into your light areas. And you can always revisit your light areas and bring some more out back into the dark, so if you need to. Just kind of a little bit of a balancing act now that we're going to get all of our pieces in there. And then, of course, if you had anything that you wanted to kind of paint out from your light areas, this is exactly when you can start to just bring some of your dark brush strokes over the top and carve it out. That being said, if your light areas are still quite wet, that white's going to come in. It might start creating gray instead of blue, if you've got any black in there especially. So if you need to wait to go back in there, just wait. But you might find that creating some of those colors and having them blend into each other creates a really fun look, and not soft blending in your sky. So maybe don't be too worried about it. See what happens. Always layer on top. If your color's getting too muddy, just wipe off your paper towel, go right back and keep painting. So my colors were just getting a little bit muddy because I picked up a little bit of my white from my paler areas. So I just want to get a little bit of that off. Just wipe it off on your paper towels. If you already got a full paper towel, just open it up like a book and you'll find some dry areas in the center. Don't forget to carve on that corner on the other side of your moon, dark side of the moon. Make sure you carve some in that corner. We don't want to neglect it. All right, so a lot less of that to have to fill in. All right, so now that we've got the contrast of the dark around that pale area, now you can really kind of start to see if there's anything that you needed to adjust. Maybe like on this corner over here, I hadn't put enough of my pale color yet. So what I'll do is just grab some more of my pale, kind of do a little bit of adjustment with some turquoise, and brighten up what I felt like just got a little lost. So this is now a great time to adjust before we get into any of the details in front. So I'm going to go right into blow drying. So take your time to finish. Pause whenever you are ready or not ready. So now what we're going to do is paint the cityscape, which doesn't really follow any specific pattern of the city. It's not like any of the buildings are super specific. So if you want to get really specific with your favorite skyscraper, a distinctive one is maybe that library that definitely doesn't look like it's gonna collapse or something. Or what's that other building it's got? I don't even know what it is. The one that's like really narrow at the bottom and then it goes out like it's really scary. It's scary. No, it's in Seattle. What is that building? I've driven by it a million times, but it's like a top where it. So, if you want to do a distinctive building, obviously we're going to do the Space Needle on top, but if there's any skyscrapers that are just like your boo in downtown, then you can Google it and paint from there. The Smith Tower is very distinctive. Oh, that'd be cute. I'm not going to paint the Smith Tower. Okay. All right, so what you're going to do is do a mixture of black and blue again. So I'm going to do a little bit of black, and you can even scoop up some of your dark blue and put it next to your black and just create kind of that midnight deep blue. It's going to be mostly blue still, maybe as much as half and half. And it's really about creating boxes in a variety of towers and shapes as you go across. It doesn't have to be anything distinctive. It kind of is taller behind where the Space Needle is and tapers off maybe towards the waterfront down here. So however you want to follow it, I'm going to start with the tallest one, which is kind of off to the center over here, off of the center. And it can go up into the dark areas. It doesn't have to stay in the light areas. I'm going to do a lot of standing in front of my canvas when I do this, though, because if I paint from over here, everything's going to lean like a cursive building over to the side over here. So I will stand and try to make things a little bit straight by doing this. So it's really just going to be, you can take your small brush and kind of fix any edges that aren't straight or anything like that, but just create boxes of a variety of size running into each other and kind of overlapping. Even do some trees in between with just like something that looks kind of like you're painting grass, but in between buildings it'll look like trees, whatever you'd like to do. So again, I'm going to stand in front of my canvas and try to do it a little bit fast, and hopefully from that angled scene you'll be able to see some of what I'm doing instead of getting blocked. You can do towers, water towers at the top of them, anything that you want to do for detail. And then from there, you're just going to fill in everything going down. So you could do that at any time. Just get a variety of sizes, though. Some of them box, some of them towers, just whatever you want. Just make sure that in between the buildings, they don't go so far down that they are outside of that pale sky that you had painted in. So just make sure it's high enough that you cover up any of just the naked blue canvas that you had before. Maybe plain blue was a better term for that. Alright, as I go down though into the bottom of my building as I'm filling it in, I'll take some of my pale blue and I'll just do a little bit of brushing down with that also. So I kind of want to do some cross hatching, so I'll do like kind of side to side brush strokes like this so that it's not swirly like up above, but it does kind of look like there's some detail down below of buildings. So it's kind of like we're creating a little ghost city down here. So instead of swirly brush strokes, I'm just going to kind of do side to side long brush strokes and little dashes and things like that. So as I'm going down, it's not going to be just filling all the way down. If you don't want the details, just fill it all the way up with your blue and black. But if you want to add little bits of detail, take your black and blue and fill it up. And then we're going to add a lot of lights and things like that into the city as well. But we'll do that when we do the stars later. So just know that there's more details going on top if it seems a little bit empty down there. Don't worry about trying to get enough little boxy looking shapes. We'll do that with our stars later. So if you're not done with that, go ahead and pause. Once you are done, maybe push play again. I'll move on to the Space Needle. So I'm just going to do a quick blow dry so I don't drag any of the colors from down below up. All right, so we're going to go ahead and do the Space Needle. And we're going to do that now so that when we go in to do like the stars and everything, we'll have the placement, so we'll know where the stars can kind of go around that. So we'll make that our next step so we're ready for everything else. So I'll draw it and break down all the shapes first. So it's mostly white, obviously, and we're going to mix in little bits of our blue as pretty much as you desire. Mostly we want it to be as bright as possible with your white, just so that it really sits quite boldly in front of the darkness of the background. But it still have a little bit of white mixed in with it. You can draw the whole thing first in white and then kind of do little random brush strokes of some pale blue, maybe with some white as well on top. So just know that we're first going to break down. I'm going to hold this in my hand, and this is a great thing to also hold as reference in your hand while you're working. So have this picture handy. And really what we're going to do first is create that pillar so we know where the burger is going to sit on top of. So I'm just going to create that pole first. So I'll go about on here. So it's going to be about 4 or 5 fingers from the top. That'll be the top of the pole, the pillar. And it's going to be about 4 or 5 fingers in from the left. So about square. That'll give me generally that the top of that beam that goes down the center. So you'll go and you'll just drag from that dot and create yourself the skewer that the burger is going to sit on top of. So maybe a little bit less than the width of your mediums brush or your larger brush of what you have, or about that width. And then we're going to do the bottom of the bun first. So that has to be, I would say, to give yourself a good start, about let's say 3 fingers just to start. We can always make it bigger. About 3 fingers on top of that is a good place to start. And then once we have that proportion, we'll just base everything off of that. Okay, so we've got the bottom of the patty next. So what we're going to do is we're going to start with that as a reference point. We're going to leave a tiny bit of space for the Space Needle. Tiny bit of space. Get it? For the tiny Space Needle? No? All right. So what you're going to do is leave a tiny bit of space in between the top of this guy and leave some of the background showing through. And then you're going to create a patty that goes a little far on either side out from there. All right, leave another space. And you're going to create one that's shorter than both of those on the top. And then on top of that one, you're going to go ahead and give it this little bump out. So it kind of curves inwards a tiny bit. Little backwards parentheses on either side. And it's going to get filled in with white. See how close we are to such magnificent. And then you're going to take a little bit of a curve up to the toothpick sticking out of the top. See? 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 All right. So now from there, again, leave that space in between to give yourself the shadows, really, is what we're doing. We're letting the sky show in between to give ourselves shadows. If you painted it all as one white silhouette, all you have to do is grab some dark blue and draw those lines later on. So do that to whatever adjustment you feel really does the trick for you. From here, what you want to do is come down from that bottom of the burger. Excuse me, bottom bun. You're going to have it come and kind of run into that, not overlap quite yet, but run into it, and then split off over here. It kind of is a nice gentle curve, and then not quite halfway down, but a little bit closer to halfway, and then split off, and then you just kind of want to echo that shape on the other side. Okay, and then on the right-hand side, you've got the ladder for the big gorilla to get up a lot easier later on, and then just another one guy over here. So that'll be quick access for the gorilla later on. What's his name? King Kong. That was really hard. I get Tiger King stuck in my head and suddenly King Kong's out, you know? All right, so that's generally Space Needle. What you'll want to do is then go in and rough it up with a little bit of blue, add a little bit of zesty Van Gogh style, but always in blue, always, because this is so, I hope you like blue, guys, because this is just packed with blue. So if you don't like blue, I don't even know why. I don't even know. I hope it's a gift, because there's a lot of blue. All right, so I'm going to go in with my medium brush. If you want to draw this all out with your little guy, absolutely. Go with your little guy, draw it all out, and you can fill it up however you need to later on. I'm feeling bold, so I'm going to go in with my white and my larger brush. Just going to get a little bit of white in there. Again, 3 or 4 fingers in from the left-hand side, just depending on kind of where proportionally you want to see it. So just come in from there, and about equidistant from the top. Give yourself a dot for the top of that pillar. And I'm going to stand in front because otherwise it's going to be a leaning tower of... Okay. Got our pole. We can always add more. Wow, that was aggressive. All right, can always add more as we need to, but for right now that's just going to give me a place for the burger to sit on top of. All right, so about 3 fingers wide. And I'll probably go in and kind of clean up the edges with my small brush a little bit later on. For right now, I just want to get the bulk of it filled in. Give yourself a little bit of space in between, and go in and give the patty a little bit more extra room. And then the top one should be narrower widthwise than both of those below. Give yourself the backwards parentheses, fill them in, little burp, 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 and then go up to the needle. So should get a little bit of a taper it into that needle. I'm just using white and my large brush. And I'll come in with a little bit of blue and not too long. And then of course it needs some legs to stand on. Still have never been to the top of the needle, man. Is that weird? But I was born in Tacoma, so everyone in Seattle can understand that, I'm sure. Alright, so now you can go in and adjust anything. Once you get all those elements in, you can maybe see if there's anything that needs a little bit of and just my general advice to you guys is not to stand to the side of your canvas and paint. That's just, you know, that's a master's technique, is to just look at your painting straight on. So, quick tip, life hack, whatever, just look at your canvas as it would hang on the wall to paint it. Alright, I'm going to give myself the ladder, little support beams. Alright, and then I'm just going to go ahead and pick up my little brush and paint the little bits of blue in there. I'll just dip into my old white and blue mixtures, but if you don't have any of those, don't have to, you can kind of pick up whatever you need to. I tend to keep some of the blues towards the center of the shapes, especially the top, so it really looks like the shadows. It's kind of the darkest towards the center where the moon is not hitting, and then as it goes out towards the edges, it gets a little bit brighter white. That's kind of the general principle I go at it with, just a little bit of shading instead of just random blue. But whatever patterns you guys are kind of attracted to, just go with. But to fill this in, you can go in with your smaller brush. I'll allow it. Also, I'm not there to stop you. So use whatever brush you want. Or maybe I'm behind you. This is recorded. You don't know where I am. Imagine in the end, it's like, she goes to jail for threatening her students. Watching. You can hear me through your glass. Put your brush in your water if you're not using it. Okay. Just little touches here and there. Just make it go with the rest of the painting. Because if it wasn't blue, it would just look like it didn't belong, right? And once it's dry, you can always put more layers on top, maybe some brighter white. As the white dries, it'll probably get a little bit more transparent. So if I get around to it, I'll go in and kind of brighten up the white, but I probably won't. So just know that that's definitely a pretty common thing, is just want to brighten up your white a little bit with another layer. So just let it dry. Just know that it doesn't have to be finished. If you leave it alone, it doesn't have to be finished. You can always revisit it. All right. Alright, so now what I'm going to do is go back to my larger brush. I'm going to fill in, actually, the yellow where the moon's going to sit on top of with this big guy, and then I'll go back to my smaller brush to fill in the stars themselves. But I want to get the background for the moon first so that it's dry when I get to it. So mostly white, little bit of yellow. So I just scooped up some of my yellow, or my white, and put it near my yellow. Pick that up and paint in that white area. What I'm also going to do, though, is kind of create this gradient, which is the same thing we'll do with our stars later on. If you want to switch to your smaller brush to do that, then go for it. But I'm going to also start grabbing some of that yellow and white mixture and going now and radiating out from that shape, just like we'll do with our stars momentarily. And just kind of bring that out, just so it's not a really hard line. We don't want it to stay a circle. We want it to look like it's really got that glowy white and yellow going out from it. So same brush strokes as before. Make sure you're spinning your brush to follow that shape. I'm continually swirling it. And I'm just going to bring that yellow out. I'm going to stand in front real quick to make sure that this does not look like as much like a squished orange. Because it was looking smushed like you put it at the bottom of your backpack. Forgot about it for a couple days. Found this orange and not quite sure if you want to eat it still. You know, a little tender. Maybe it's orange juice inside though. You shouldn't just leave it. You should open it up and find out what's inside. It might be a moon. All right, my small brush. I'm going to create all those areas now for the stars because now that I'm done with the space nail, I really do have the spacing, the space ready for where I want to put those stars. So it's going to be that white, either by itself or mixed with some yellow, depending on what you want. I'm going to go with a slightly tinted yellow white, so it's quite pale, but you can go with just solid white if you want to. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to swirl on my stars. You can put them wherever you'd like to. You can use the original one as a good reference for kind of placement, but put them wherever you want. So I'm going to start with doing dots for where I want to see them. And just know that they're going to be slightly different sizes, so you can put a couple more in there and just make them maybe small so that they really feel like there's good variety to stars. So once I've got the placement kind of down, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start in the center of one of these dots, and I'm just going to start doing very loose. By loose, I'm not putting a lot of pressure on these stars, so I'm just letting a little bit of paint go in. The center needs to be kind of a solid color, and then as I swirl out and start to run out of paint, I'm going to start picking up my brush and doing just little soft swirls, just like barely kissing the canvas with my brush and letting them fade out kind of naturally. You can go back and do a little bit stronger colors if you want to. You can swirl or you can do little dashes. Just kind of spiraling out. Get as loose as you want. And don't forget, they're going to be different sizes. Some can be quite large. As many as you want. You can even do some dots. They don't all have to be the swirls. So if you want some little stars up there, just do little dots as well. It's a great way to fill up and brighten up your sky just a little bit. You'll do some of these swirls down in your city, but you'll definitely do all those little dots down in the cityscape. So whenever you want to go down there and add, you can do some swirls as well as little dots or dashes, really, wherever you want the building lights to be. So add whatever you'd like for details. You can do if you're feeling it, you could do a 12 in one of the skyscraper windows. That's always a nice little touch. All right. These are always my favorite part because they just totally change the painting and just kind of brighten it up, add that glow. So nice. And just adding some yellow to it just warms it all up. Makes it very happy. All right, I'm going to go down and just do some small swirls down in the city. Just a few, and then I'll do a good amount of dots. It's good to do little groupings of the swirls too, maybe 3 that are near each other, a little bit of a break, and then 1. And then as many dots as your heart's content. Go cray cray. Not like cut your ear off crazy, but like, you know, as crazy as you're feeling. So before you go, I've got some interesting Van Gogh snippets. If you guys haven't seen the movie Loving Vincent, you definitely need to go watch that. It's the one that they had hundreds of artists paint every single frame of the painting, or the video, movie, thing, recording. So every single one is them doing it in Van Gogh's style, telling a portion of, actually after his life and a portion of during his life. and those who knew him based on all of his paintings. So if you are any amount of Van Gogh or artist's fan in general, it is just a beautiful, beautiful movie. And it's so well done, so well acted, and of course, stunning artwork the whole way. So that's definitely something to check out if you have not seen it already. One last touch for your painting. You can add little bits of that yellow, even by itself, not with white, just to warm up some of your swirls. It looks great having a little bit of that just kind of swing through your pale parts of your blue. You can add that at any time. Just the yellow by itself or with some white. Just little dashes here and there. The reason Van Gogh is famous now is not because of his work just being discovered. It's because of his brother's widow. I don't actually remember her name, but his brother's widow, Vincent's brother's widow, she was so dedicated to, I think they only met a few times, she was so dedicated to pretty much her husband's passion for his brother's work that she kept them and slowly distributed them and create novels of his work. And actually the first thing that really propelled him into fame was releasing a book of Vincent and his brother's letters to each other. And there was a huge novel that was released with just those, which I haven't read yet. I don't know why I haven't looked those up, but it's supposed to be quite stunning, and that actually made them famous. And then his paintings were referenced. You can see all of his little sketches to his brother in all of those letters, which is really fun. I don't remember what it's called, but I'm sure it's easy to find. And then she slowly, over her whole life, slowly sold little bits of his work, but mostly maintained it and only let a few out at a time. And then towards the end of her life, I think, she finally I saw it, the big sunflowers. He's most famous for sunflowers at the time. Sunflowers, she finally sold her favorite one that was sitting in front of her mantle for decades. Let the British Museum have it. And that, getting him in there, was the thing that propelled him to international fame. It's a really fascinating story, but I had no idea that this whole time we should be grateful not to Vincent or even his brother, but to his widow. So anyway, not for a downer, but I just thought it was fascinating just to think that she's actually, no one even knows her name of all things, but she's the reason that you guys are painting Van Gogh's work right now. Another fun thing is there are like 3 versions of Starry Night. He painted 3 versions, and you kind of wonder which one you've been looking at this whole time, right? So anyway, last touch, we're going to paint that moon. It's going to be some of your yellow by itself. You can take your small brush for that. A little bit of brown just to really deepen it into a really dark, deep kind of ochre yellow. So really golden yellow for that end bit. And then your crescent moon, is just going to be, first start with a big C that fills up that shape as much as you can. The ends need to stay tapered, and as it comes in, you're going to grow kind of the belly of that C and then taper it off as it goes towards those edges. Maybe practice that shape at least once on the paper in front of you. The first time you're like, oh, it's just a C, and then you just make it large, and then you realize, oh, I guess it's getting a full moon tonight. That's cool, which is totally fun. I actually love this painting with a full moon instead of a crescent. So, plus we just had that huge harvest moon. Oh my gosh, that was beautiful. So, it was a pink moon. I saw a picture of like a pink moon, and I was really excited. It was yellow. It's kind of this color, really. All right. And chances are you're going to need probably 2 layers of that yellow if you want a pure color. And then once you're done with that moon, if you want to go in and add more details to absolutely anything, now that you've kind of got all those elements in there like we talked about, now you can really see where you need to change any balance. If you want to get more bright white on that Space Needle, that's what I would do if I was going to go in and finish anything off. Another thing you could do is brighten up your stars with some pure white. I would probably go in and add just some yellow dots maybe in the center where the stars are, and anything like that that you can imagine, just go with it. You guys are making your own paintings, so just have fun with it now and get a little loose with it. Add your final touches, and we would love to see your photos of your work, and we would love to see you guys even painting. If you guys took pictures while you're in your workspace, painting, we would absolutely love to see it. You can send that to us directly or on Facebook. So if you have any feedback or if you have pictures, just send it to info@uncorkedcanvas.com. And then if you would like to leave any comments or anything publicly, you can just go to our Facebook page. That would be perfect. So it's Uncorked Canvas Seattle up in the Seattle area, or Uncorked Canvas in Tacoma. And just thank you for spending your time with us today. I had a lot of fun. I hope you did too. And we hope to see you here soon. Thank you.
Make sure you like and subscribe so you never miss out on the next big thing from Uncorked Canvas.